Hello friends and welcome. My name is Britt, and if you're new here, I make videos about journaling, books, and art. And today we'll be looking at my new annual setup for my 2025 reading journal. So let's get right into it. This is a Cognitive Surplus hardcover dot grid notebook. I really like this company because they make really interesting science-themed covers, so that's why I like to use them. They're nice quality. I haven't had any issues with them, like the ink going through the pages or anything like that. I will just give you a little bit of my philosophy of journaling. They always say in these flip-throughs before we get started, is that if you are a journaler, do not be a perfectionist about your journal. Your journal is supposed to be something fun and relaxing and helpful to you in some way. I make a lot of mistakes in my journals. I like to leave those in videos because I want it to be more realistic, because I know that when you see these things online, usually what people do is cut out all the bad parts so you never see it, when in fact we're all struggling with a lot of things. So be kind to yourself, don't worry about perfection, and if you really hate something, you can always flip the page over and do it over again. So don't stress about it. Okay, moving on. This is the title page, and I was trying to find inspiration to have a theme that would tie all these annual spreads together. I was having trouble thinking of something, so for the first illustration, I just decided to go with the snake because it's the year of the snake in the Chinese zodiac. And I wanted this to be very colorful, so I chose a certain color palette out of my colored pencils. So all these illustrations are done with colored pencil, and they're kind of neon colors like this, a lot of greens and pinks and purples. And also, you can see this is kind of a geometric vine going on here. This is inspired by Art Deco, and then a little later on, more like Art Nouveau type styles. Those are styles of art from the early 20th century. So that's what I kind of was getting my inspiration for these things. So let's move to the first spread, which is the least interesting one in here, which is the table of contents. This font is called Moderately, if you're interested in it. And this is the font that I use for all the headings, and I picked it because it looks a little bit Art Nouveau-ish. This is just a very simple table of contents. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it or not because I tend to just kind of flip through the pages, and since I have a lot of visuals on the pages and it's not all text, it's kind of easy to see. So I don't know if I'm actually going to use this or need it, but I made one just to try it out because I've never done it before. But this journal is not numbered. The pages don't come numbered, so if you do decide to do that in a lot of brands of journals, you'll have to number the pages yourself. There's just this column to write what's on the page, the title of the page, and then whatever page it is. Very simple. And this one also has the simplest illustration, just kind of another little Art Deco vine at the bottom. And this yellow chartreuse color is one of my favorite colors of all time, so that's kind of a thread through all of these. I guess it's a little bit kind of 1990s colored. And I tried to cut out any spreads that I didn't think I was going to use, because last year I went like hog wild with those spreads and just made so many annual spreads, and I only used about half of them. So I tried to be a little bit more mindful of the choices I was making about what things to put in here. All right, moving on. So the first real spread here is the book log, and just something that I want to mention real quick is that all the materials that I used to make this will be in the description box below if you would like to know. Also, what I did here is I made all of the layouts of what was going to go on that page first before I did the decorations. So I did all these pen boxes on all of these pages like first. The illustration that I then decided on after that had to kind of fit around it because I had already made the boxes. Maybe that's not the best way to do things, but it took me a really long time to decide on what I was going to draw, so I did everything else first. This is all colored pencil, including these highlights on every other line on here. You can write over colored pencil with a permanent pen, like with a Sakura Pigma Micron pen because it's permanent ink. But I have found that if you write over a lot of colored pencil, it will kind of clog up the nib of your pen and mess up your pen. So this is actually one of my favorite illustrations in this whole journal. I love this snail. I have one on each page here. I love him so much. And so this is how I record all the books that I read in a year. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. Some people like to print out the covers and have all the covers in one place. Some people like to have a shelfie, which is like when you draw a bookshelf and you write the title on all the spines. This is just the way that I like to do it. It saves space in here, and I print out the covers later on when I do the monthly ones. So I don't need that like redundantly in two places. So the things that I decided to record that are of interest to me is the title and the author, the dates that I read the book, how many pages it was, the year it was published, and then 3 little boxes I can put a check mark in. Was it for book club? Was it an ARC, which is like a early release review copy? Or did I get it from the library? And I'm just going to insert a plug for public libraries right here. If you're a reader and you're not using your library, you are missing out big time. You can get so many audiobooks, so many digital books, so many print books at your local library. And that's how I read. Probably around 80% of everything that I read in a year is from the library, maybe even more than that. It's something that you're paying for anyway with your tax money, so you might as well take advantage of it, save yourself some money, and don't contribute quite as much to mass consumerism. And librarians are awesome. They're always there to help you with things. It's amazing. So use your library. So I decided to do 2 pages of this book log. Hopefully that will be enough. I think it will be. It goes to 144. So that should be enough. If you want to see closer up versions of these illustrations, I will put them on my Instagram account, so you can go check them out there. All right, this is my genre tracker. And I did something very similar to this, almost identical to this, in my 2024 reading journal. So these are just boxes. I did 200. Again, I'm not going to fill up 200, but it just looked nice on the page. So that's the number that I put. Last year, I titled this as my reading goal. Now, I am an anti-goal person, which might sound kind of strange. I am not a fan of setting goals for myself. They feel like pressure. I don't know, it's probably the wrong mindset to have, but I just don't like that idea of like having a specific number as a goal for something, for anything really. And I don't really care how many books I read. I do it as a hobby, and it's supposed to relax me and it's supposed to be enjoyable. So instead of calling it a goal tracker, I just change the name to genre tracker because that's what I was doing anyway. So what I do here is color in the box, and the genres that I like to track that I most often read is sci-fi, fantasy, horror, mystery, and I'll also throw in thriller with that one, literary, and then if I read any historical fiction, I'll throw it in with that one, and nonfiction. So you could choose anything else that you wanted. You could do different genres. You could track something else about the books, like how many pages are in the books, like 0 to 200, 200 to 300, whatever you want. So you could do something visually like this, but track whatever you want with it. This illustration of mushrooms, if you know anything about me at all, it's that I love mushrooms and I want to put fungus on everything that I make. So I had to put mushrooms in here somewhere in these annual spreads. And this yellow chartreuse color just like lends itself so nicely to those kind of bioluminescent glowy mushrooms. So I love these guys. And you could fill these in different ways. What I'm going to do this year is use colored pencil because that's what I already used to illustrate everything with. But there are other ways you can do it. You can use stickers too. So last year what I did was use these little washi dot stickers, and they're nice to use too because if you stick it on here, since washi tape is kind of transparent, you can still read what the number is. So that's another way of doing that. All right, moving on. So this is going to be my year in pixels, or my daily reading, and then my to be read list, which continues to the next side. This is a year in pixels kind of chart, and it's just a way, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a way to record something every day for a year. A lot of journalers do it for any kind of tracker they want to use. So you could track, you know, your exercise, your sleep, your mood, whatever you want with one of these. I'm just going to use it to track whether I read that day or not. Again, I don't have any kind of goal about reading every day. I'm not trying to read every day in the year. I just kind of like to see it and see where I had places where I'm reading a lot, places where I'm reading less, things like that. So I just like it. And I track those things on my Storygraph app, and then I can just transfer it into here. So I don't actually need to come into this journal and mark it every single day, because I would never do that. That's too much work. And then TBR stands for to be read. You could call this whatever you want, but basically it's the books that are interesting to me that I might want to read in this particular year. And this just gives me a way to quickly reference when I'm trying to figure out what to read. I'm a mood reader, so deciding what to read at any particular point is kind of difficult for me. It has to be whatever I'm in the mood for at that exact moment, otherwise I cannot be interested in it. This is really helpful for me, and probably what I will do is assign these different columns different genres, so I can kind of have categories. So if I'm interested in horror, I can look at a specific column. If I'm interested in sci-fi, I can look at a specific column. Again, I do keep track of this in my Storygraph app, but I like add thousands of things to that list, because anytime I see anything that looks interesting, I put it on that list. So it's not that useful, because you got to narrow things down more. So this is like the ones that I am the most interested in reading in this particular year at the time that I write it in. So I'll write that in probably in a couple of weeks. For the illustration, I did this kind of Art Nouveau-esque kind of a vine situation that are intertwined with each other. And then I added fireflies. I love fireflies, that's another thing. So now you might be able to tell that I did kind of eventually fall into a theme, which is all the little critters that like live in the garden. So this is my critter setup, and I love them all because they're so cute. And then this is the second page of the TBR list, and there's more fireflies over here. Over here, so cute. All right. So this is an ABC or an alphabet challenge, and again, I'm not really into challenges per se, but I like how this looks at the end of the year. It's fun to fill it in, but I'm not going to specifically seek out like a book that starts with K or whatever to make this work. But I do like how it looks. I set this up very similarly again to the one that I did in my 2024 journal, because I really liked how that looked. When I read a specific book that starts with that letter, I will print out the cover and I will stick it in here, and it'll just be the very first book of the year that starts with that letter. It doesn't bother me that I have a couple spaces left in my 2024 one, like X and Z and stuff are still there because those are really hard letters, and J, surprisingly, is a very hard letter. It doesn't bother me. I just like to see it fill up over the year. The printer I use to print out these pictures is the HP Sprocket printer. The type of printer it is a Z-ink printer, which means there's not like an ink cartridge. It's somehow in the paper that you use. And I've found that that type of printer, the colors are never very good. They always come out kind of weirdly greenish and strange. But, you know, I don't need a lot of detail because these are going to be so small. So I'll still use it for like printing little things, but I've actually bought a Kodak mini printer that prints out much nicer and uses normal ink. For when I want to print out something that actually looks nice. So that's the alphabet challenge. Moving on. I love to read translated fiction. I'm a huge, huge fan of that. A lot of what I read in 2024 was translated. And so I wanted a way to visually show that on here and not just in my apps. So this kind of doesn't match the rest of this journal because this is something that I put in here before I decided on the decoration. So it's on this brown craft paper. I traced this by putting the piece of paper over top of my iPad, and that took a really long time and it was very tedious. So I don't recommend you do that. If you have a normal printer, just print it out. But I don't have a normal printer. So that's why I did it like this. And what I did was the countries that I've read from like ever in my life, I colored in with this other tan color just to like lightly mark like I've already read from that country. But the ones that I read this year specifically, I will pick probably one of these purple colors and I'll use that to color it in, so you'll be able to differentiate. But I haven't decided on that, so I have the key that's empty right here. And the theme for this spread is moths. So these are all based on the patterns of real life moths, and I just changed the colors. So if you're not a big reader of translated books, I would really encourage you to give it a try. There's so many interesting things that you're missing out on if you don't read anything that's translated. And it's really nice to get different perspectives from different countries and different kinds of people that are different from you. I found it to be really great, and some of my favorite books ever in my entire life are translated. So check it out if you haven't already done so. Of course, there are other ways you could track this if you don't like this kind of visual way or you don't want to bother with the drawing. You could just write out the list in a much simpler fashion and then like highlight or cross them off, you know, things like that. Or you could do the states of the US or the provinces of Canada, whatever country you live in, if you wanted to do that. So there's different ways you could do something similar and make it more attainable or easier to do. Or you could pick a continent and do that way. So like trying to hit the countries in Europe or Africa, etc. But I just like to see, you know, for that particular year, what countries did I read from? And then the last annual spread that I have in here is for the popsugar reading challenge. This is my most long-term challenge that I've done every year. I think this will be 4th or 5th year that I'm trying to do the popsugar reading challenge. It has 50 prompts every year, and you're supposed to read a book that fits into that prompt. So, for example, prompt number 1 for this year is read a book about a person of color experiencing joy and not trauma. So there's actually a lot of good prompts this year. I like them a lot better than the prompts from last year. 2024 was the first year that I didn't actually finish it, that I've tried to do it, because my mood reading was very intense in 2024. And so if I didn't feel like, if there wasn't a book in a specific prompt that interested me, I just didn't do it. But I condensed this down to just take up 2 pages because it took up like, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages because I was printing out the book covers in my 2024 one. And I'm like, well, if I don't do it, I just used so many pages for that thing and I don't need to do that. So I'm just gonna write them in. So this is one of the popular ones that a lot of people do. So I'll put a link in the description box if you want to check it out and if you want to read all the prompts. There's another one called the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge. I'll also link that one if you want to check out a different one. But it's nice to have something that is kind of giving you ideas to read something that you might not normally pick up, but that might be really good. So it's a way of giving me more ideas about the things that I might want to read. And then, you know, if there's a prompt that you really don't like, you can either just not do it, or you can kind of stretch it to fit something in there. Like, for example, I don't read romance. So if there happens to be a prompt one year that says like, read a romance about blah, 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 I'm not doing that. So I might just read any book about whatever topic it's supposed to be about, or I'll read a book that has a romantic plotline in it, but it is not a romance book. So, you know, this is for you to have a good time. So, you know, you don't have to stick to it like it's written in stone. You can tweak it to fit however you want to do it, and that's totally fine. And if anybody on the internet tells you it's not fine, screw them. Okay, and this is another one of my favorite illustrations in here. Oh my god, look at that inchworm. I love him so much. This and the snail are my favorite ones. And I use pink, obviously, little branches up there and down here. I love it. So I learned my lesson from the previous ones, and in this one I used marker instead of colored pencil to color in the lines. This is how I learned. I actually messed this up the first time, and so that is pasted together right here is my original one that got messed up. So that's my reading journal for 2025. So I hope it'll be a good reading year for you and for me. And as the year goes forward, I will be creating an artistic themed layout for every month of the year in this reading journal. And so, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is my most art intensive journal, and so this is where most of the fun stuff happens. So hopefully, if you enjoyed this, you can join me every month and see what I come up with. And also get a book review of every book that I read at the end of each month. So now, to finish things up, I'm going to go back to the beginning and we'll do a flip through of all the pages in order so you can just visually see everything. But before we do that, just remember, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I would love to have you here in this community with me. All right, let's check it out. Thank you so much for joining me. If you had a good time, I hope you'll join me for some more videos in the future. I try to make these videos as relaxing and calming as possible. So this one is a little bit more energetic because it's a flip through, but when I do my voiceover videos, they're a little more calmer. So if you need something to wind down at the end of the day or even fall asleep to, I won't be offended if you use it for that. Then you can check out my monthly videos. And I'm wishing you all a happy and healthy new year, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.